Hello. So this is an explanation of common mistakes that I've seen in compositions of students from my 102 class. And when I grade these compositions, I usually have a white sheet by my side where I write things that are repeated, and I give this to students to help them rewrite their compositions. You can use the symbols page in Canvas also to help you determine what kind of mistake you made, but these will be helpful too. So first of all is some of you have a note in your compositions that say, hey, you can and you should be in Spanish 211, you're a heritage speaker, and you would be more comfortable in this class than in 201 for next semester. So that's all this mark means. Work on time, I just want to remind you really quick, this class has been pretty good turning everything on time on Canvas, but I want to remind you guys that in this course we don't take late work, so it's recommended to keep track of all the due dates, to not be late and not miss any assignments. Also would like to tell you and remind you that help from friends or online translators is not allowed. In fact, it's considered cheating and plagiarism. And I don't care how good of a friend or your mom or your dad or your sister is with Spanish, because if they are doing the composition, then the work is not yours, it's theirs. So my recommendation is, if you need help, contact your professor, because she knows how to help you with these things. If a friend just give you a translator of a verb tense that you haven't even studied, then you won't be able to repeat that tense or that mode or whatever on your own. So that is not okay, and that is not your work. Titles in Spanish are not capitalized. They're capitalized, like this title, the first letter of the title, or after a period, or if it's a proper name, but otherwise, all the other words of the title are not capitalized. If you're writing a long composition, please divide the information in paragraphs. Paragraphs are the way you have to manipulate the reader. You can conduct a reader to whatever you want them to be with this organization. And it's important to have these paragraphs in, because when I go and see one paragraph that takes 2 pages, I'm ready to have a heart attack. Connectors. The instructions said you had to use certain connectors and they had to be underlined. Apparently, some of you did not read the instructions because you forgot to include these connectors and to underline them. Connectors are important. They are important because they help link ideas. They also help do transitions of ideas. And again, they're another way to present your information and in a way manipulate your reader. Take your reader to whatever you want them to go. Sometimes you will see these, reformula. Reformula means that I can really not help you with a tiny little comment on a word or couple words, because the problems are deeper than that. In this case, you need to erase that sentence and start from a beginning. Start by simplifying your thought. I know you have complex thoughts and you have complex structures in English to express them, but you don't have the same tools in Spanish. So you need to simplify the thought. And instead of doing a super long sentence, just say it with a couple words. Start with the verb. The verb will be the one that will be the organizer and the center of the sentence. Remember, please, that in Spanish, question marks and exclamation marks have 2 symbols, not only the last one. Sometimes I make a note that says transitions. Look, you may have in your mind 3 sentences. I woke up early today, but I didn't have enough time to make my eggs. So instead of making eggs for breakfast, I decided to have cereal. I don't know. Imagine you think that, but you only write, I woke up early, I had cereal. How do I know what happened in the middle? If you're going to use the information about the eggs later, how do I know that didn't happen? You need to express it. It's not enough with thinking. You need to write it for me to get it. Using the spell check, it's fine. You can use the spell checking word. Put your keyboard in Spanish, and that's okay. Remember that donde, cuando, como, que, cuál are interrogative words, and they need accent marks. When they are presenting questions, they have an accent mark. Be consistent with the tense you're using. These instructions are prepared for you to write in present if you want to. When you get a little more complicated tense, problems happen. So why don't you just try to go and write it in present? It's fine. Now, some of them decide to go with those fancy tenses, but of course, problems happen, like I say. Sometimes I give you a little more information. I don't just tell you verb tense. You need to change the tense. Sometimes I tell you a little more and tell you what kind of tense you should use. We may not have studied those tenses in this class, but if I'm giving it to you, it's because I know you can go to the book, you can find where the explanation of this tense is, and you can decide on your own what form do you need to use within this verb tense. One structure that I see repeatedly having trouble is to have to do something. Tener que plus infinitive. What I see is that que is forgotten when you write this. Antes de plus después de, when followed by a verb, that verb should be an infinitive. Remember that in Spanish it's kind of strange, but we don't say me lavo mis dientes. Like in English you say I wash my teeth. We say I wash myself the teeth, which is kind of nuts, right? But it's how Spanish does the construction. The reflexive verb, it's already indicating that you're doing it to yourself. And then, instead of the possessive, teeth are going to be accompanied by a normal article. And there are other cases here, other samples. S-E-H. Okay, difference between ser and estar are part of the 101 curriculum. Go back in the book. And there are wonderful charts in this book to determine the differences between these two verbs. And one thing the book doesn't really include very much in detail is that haber is another verb that works as to be. Haber means there is or there are. Mirar y ver. Heritage speakers in particular have a tendency to confuse these two verbs. Mirar means to look at, ver means to see, and they mean different things. So watch out when you have one of these underlined. Watch out and check what is exactly what you want to say. Same with más y muy. They have different meanings. Saber and conocer. Both of them mean to know, but they have different uses. Saber is used with information, and conocer is used with knowing a person or a place. ¿Sabes a qué hora es el examen? ¿O conoces a mi mamá? Okay. Sobreviviente, it's a word that it's okay, but it's a very oral word. And I know it comes in the dictionary as this, but I'm going to challenge you to actually use superviviente, which is a more appropriate word for a written text. How do you say in Spanish it's hot? You don't say es caliente. What you say is hace calor. With verbs that are going to use people as the object, you're going to have to use the a personal. Buscar, mirar, ayudar, plus somebody, a personal. And you forget this a again and again. Buscar por does not translate as to look for. To look for in Spanish, you just say it as buscar. You don't need the preposition por. Remember that buscar is not the same as encontrar. They're two different verbs. Buscar, to look for. Encontrar, to find. And sometimes you mix them, so watch out with that. Me, when it's a preposition that is, when it's a pronoun that follows a preposition, needs an accent mark. We have studied several ses this semester, but there is a new se of I know, first person of the verb saber. That se has an accent. También pues no equals tampoco. You studied these in indeterminate, indefinite, and negative words. When there's an enumeration of words and the last one starts with an I, that E or and that we're going to put in there is going to change for an E, because in Spanish we cannot say guapo y inteligente, sino guapo e inteligente. Now, the difference between pez and pescado, pez es el animal vivo, alive, and pescado is the dead animal, the one we eat. It's kind of like pig and pork. Mi familia's casa is a structure that comes from English. The apostrophe S or Saxon genitive does not work in Spanish. So in Spanish, we would never say mi familia's casa. We would say la casa de mi familia. Agua, ave, águila are funny words because even though they're feminine, they use a masculine article. They do it because the strength of the pronunciation is in the first letter, but the first letter is an A. So in Spanish, saying la agua would make it too strong of an A sound, and that's not phonetically accepted. So what we do is we change la for L, and then the word is still feminine. It's just using a masculine article. One of my favorite things of Spanish is that vacation is used always in plural. You can go once to Costa Rica, but it's still vacaciones, por ejemplo. And last, I've seen a couple or more than a couple students starting sentences with pero. Pero is a conjunction that put two sentences together, or actually confronts two sentences. Sentence A, pero sentence B. You cannot put it after a period because if you put it after a period, you're eliminated sentence A. So please don't start sentences with pero. Pero should be in the middle of two sentences, but not after a period. This is the end of my list, but again, if you have personal questions about your own problems in the composition, please feel free to come to see me, or email me if it's something short or small, or just to contact me however you think is the most appropriate way. Good luck with it. Bye-bye.